Today, we will be discussing a pretty sensitive topic. We will be talking about manifesting healing, but also discussing overcoming trauma after sexual abuse and violence. So, trigger warning if you're sensitive to these issues and don't think you can handle talking about them without a professional present, I would highly recommend that you don't continue with this video. Overcoming trauma after sexual abuse and violence is one of the hardest things a person can experience in their life. Today, I will be going over and sharing with you a framework, which is a self talk exercise to help you navigate your emotions, triggers, and pain around your trauma. And hopefully, by the end of this video, I can help you come up with a plan to manifest healing and stop the trauma from your past from affecting your future. We all deserve more, we all deserve better than that. Okay, anybody who's ever struggled with sexual abuse or trauma, anybody who's ever been victim blamed or shamed for having gone through this trauma or being sexually harassed deserves better. You deserve reassurance, you deserve to acknowledge your triggers and your pain so you can move from it. We can't let what someone did in the past, let someone else's actions define the rest of our lives, right? And when you are suffering from that type of trauma, it's really hard to acknowledge that or understand that, because a lot of the times it leaves us feeling unworthy. It leaves us feeling like we don't deserve to heal, we don't deserve to be happy. And the triggers, they can take years to develop and then years to be acknowledged or be found and solved. But if, like me, you're also tired of letting your past experiences affect your future and your present moments, then this video is for you. So, to get started with this process, this exercise, I want you to grab a pen and paper so you can take notes. Otherwise, I will leave these notes in the description box down below, as well as it is up as a blog post on my website as well, if you want something to read and reference to instead of having to come back to this video. I will be sharing my own trauma, my own traumatic events from my life, uh, to help you kind of understand the thought process that I go through, and how I, connect the dots, right? So I think the only way to really describe it is to actually tell you about my own issues and how I use this, right? I do want to just say, you guys, like, trigger warning, there is a lot of childhood sexual abuse here. There's talk about violence coming up in this video. I do want to let you know that if that's triggering for you, you might want to skip some parts here. And I think I've like just put this off for the longest time, and I've never really talked about it because I know like some of my family members or some people who even might have been the abusers might be watching my videos, and then I think that keeps me from coming forward and just talking about it. But I do think to be a good life coach, it's really important to be transparent about your own story, because why the hell would someone come to me for advice and to learn something from me when you don't even know who I am, right? So let's get started. I'm sure you have your pen and paper by now. So number one is acknowledging the traumas, right? So this is what I did, okay? I took my journal and I wrote down exactly what my traumas were, what these traumatic experiences were in my life. I just made a list of them. So one of the most traumatic things in my life was seeing violence at home. Ever since like day one of my life, like I've been watching violence at home, watching my mom getting beaten up, um, and just women around me in general. I just, like, my dad was, I'm sure he loved me a lot, but he was really violent. How we are in this world, who we become, like, it really 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 comes from our parents' validation. And as a baby, you need that. As a toddler, you need that. And when we all know that how horribly even the little things that we say to our kids could affect them. Now imagine living in a household where your mom's constantly being beaten up by your dad. And I'm not talking about like fist fights or just screaming matches. I'm talking about like actually like my granddad, my uncles, everybody ganging up on her and beating the living hell out of her, to the point where I remember one day we walked into the house with literally all of our extended family was visiting for a wedding. I don't even know how old I was. I was probably like 5, 6 years old. We walk in and there's just like blood droplets like leading up to my parents' room, and I think he broke her nose or something. She was just standing in the bathroom, and I could see this woman like trying not to cry and stuff like that. And it was just like, just seeing those type of things every single day almost was really like, if he didn't like the food that she cooked, he would literally take it and throw it out. I saw him do that once. The second thing that happened in my life that was really, really traumatic for me was getting molested. Um, and it was by multiple people on multiple occasions and multiple times. And well, it was like 5 different people to be exact. I made a list. In this list, like, I wrote down exactly who molested me, and just recalling that trauma and just like putting names, putting faces, putting words to them out loud, because I feel like when I first remembered about getting molested as a kid, I really, really suppressed it. Like, I didn't want to accept that happened to me. I didn't want to believe that these people, because some of these people were really just people who were supposed to protect you in the world, right? It was not my dad, I will say that. It wasn't him, but it was just people who are supposed to be good, people who you're supposed to be able to trust. Even in my mind, like, I couldn't believe that these people could do something like that to me. And but they did, and that is the truth, and it has affected me to this very day. I can't just go around. Let me just tell you, one of these guys was um the priest, like, in our house, like the teacher who used to come to our house to teach us Quran. It was one of the guys was that, like, he's a religious spiritual guide, right? He's a teacher, he's a spiritual teacher, and he's an Islamic teacher. He leads so many people at the mosque every single day in prayer, and he was molesting a kid. It just, I don't know, it's just so disgusting to me that people can do that. And then you can't really go to your dad or to your mom, because your mom's already in survival mode as a kid. And I think when you're living in a hostile situation at home as kids too, we just like start protecting our own parents without even realizing it. Because I know, like, if I ever told my dad or he found out, like, he would have either killed the person because he was so violent, or I don't know, just done something really bad. So I never felt like I could go up to him and tell him that I was in trouble. There were a lot of situations in my life where I needed his protection, but I could not go to him because I knew that instead of protecting me, he would just kill me. At least that's what I felt like, because the way he punished us all the time, right? His punishment to women was just so severe that it kept me from seeking protection from him. And your dad is supposed to protect you, especially when you live with him and your mom's not around anymore. Moving on to the next point, I feel like I was really shamed and bullied for being myself, because obviously, you're coming from a dysfunctional household like that. You're not going to be a normal kid. And I think that is okay. I think now I realize that, okay, I was over dramatic. I was always hypersensitive. I still am hypersensitive. And I think a lot of the times, like, I felt like I wouldn't fit into social gatherings, or like I was kind of like a black sheep all the time, or I was like too confident or over confident. Over is a word that was used a lot for me as a kid. I feel like that's a very triggering word to me. A lot of people would call me extra, and over is a way of saying extra in Pakistan, right? But I think I was like really shamed and just bullied for being myself, and I didn't really know how to be myself because I didn't know who I was, honestly. Because it's not like that my family was not good. There were a lot of good things there too. But I feel like a lot of it was just spoiling me, and if that conditioning had stuck with me, I would be a spoiled brat today. Like, I would just be a materialistic, narrow minded type of person who is just constantly comparing themselves to other people. I wouldn't be who I am today. Like, I wouldn't be humble or spiritual and stuff like that. not having that validation at home from your own parents as a child. I think I just kind of grew up to be seeking that externally all the time from people, around me. And that's like when I dated boys and stuff like that. It was always, subconsciously going after people I knew would just be toxic to me or be bad to me. Um, and just like in my teenage, like a very young age, I was like stalked online, I was sexually harassed online, I was blackmailed by a guy who edited my pictures. And I don't even know what his obsession was. He was like a cyber stalker. He stalked me for like a good 10 years or so. um, it was pretty crazy. He's never met me, he's never seen me. He just saw my profile on Facebook, and this person you know just came after me, and he was obsessed with me for like the longest time. And again, when I had boyfriends or I went on a date, I was shamed for that. Instead of being guided to not do these things or why I shouldn't, I feel like I was really always shamed and always blamed for being in that position. I remember like when I was like 9, 10 years old and my body started changing, I was also gaining a lot of weight because like my parents had just divorced. I was kind of eating my emotions. Like one of my uncles used to like tell me that he didn't want to take me to places because I was giving sexual looks to people. And I think that really, really, really destroyed my self-image, because I was old enough to understand what he was saying, but also not old enough to understand what sex was. And and obviously being molested as a kid, your relationship with that part of yourself, your sexuality and all that, that's already pretty damaged. And you're too young to have to even deal with it or acknowledge it. So I was constantly shamed for looking at someone a certain way. Or when I had a boyfriend, I went on a date, I was shamed, I was beaten to death. Like I was told, oh, no one would marry you, no one would want you, stuff like that. Where if a woman gets harassed or sexually abused, it's her fault. um like I don't understand. Like I don't see the logic in that, and I know that is incorrect. I know that now that I'm like 25, 26 years old almost. But at that time, those things just had this long pattern in me that I felt like I was unworthy of love. I was unworthy of love because I was bad. If a man is hitting on me or objectifying me, that is my fault. Like it's my fault for existing basically. And I blamed myself for it because that is what my social conditioning was at that time. You went on a date, you're a whore, you're a slut. But if a guy my age went on a date, he was oh, he's just being a boy. you know I was never told that if something bad happens to you, you need to speak out, and you need to like not let that be a defining factor. You need to stand up for yourself. I was never taught to do that. So a lot of the time, when bad things did happen, I also blamed myself. It wasn't just the people. I'm sure they moved on and stuff like that. And it wasn't just one incident. There were like multiple incidents where I found myself in situations where I had a man coercing me, or like, a toxic boyfriend trying to convince me that he's cheating on me because I'm not giving him enough, or it's my fault that he's cheating on me. And I actually had that happen multiple times. And I look back at my dating history and I'm just so glad that I am not like that anymore. That part of me definitely is healed. I can say that much. But I just had this social conditioning where not only did I get sexually abused multiple times from my childhood up till my teenage, but then I also was conditioned and programmed to believe that it is my fault as a woman for, having the boobs or having a big butt, stuff like that. It's like my fault that I looked at someone. I looked at a guy. It's not his fault that he couldn't keep it in his pants or he decided to use that against me, right? So there was no accountability for male figures in my life. And so that really definitely um, left me in a vulnerable position and just really wounded and not being able to understand who I am. A lot of body image issues happened. I think I have spoken about my eating disorders before. I had bulimia, I had anorexia, and I also, like in Pakistan, there was a lot of pressure on being thin and fair and stuff like that. So and I'm a short person, so every time I gained like even a few pounds, there was someone telling me, "Oh, are you not going to the gym anymore?" Or like, "Oh, you're gaining weight, maybe you should eat less." There was just so much shaming around eating habits as well. And I feel like it had long term effects on me, and I'm sure the people who were doing those things didn't know that they would. But I feel like we're more educated on psychology now to know that everything that we say does affect our children in the long run. I think we are more um, aware of the mental health issues now in 2022. So basically, all that being shamed and blamed for, being sexually harassed and being sexually abused, that left me really alone too, because I felt like a lot of like my friends were not allowed to hang out with me. There were a lot of people who could not relate to me. It was really hard to socialize as I grew older. And almost everywhere I went, it was like, oh, this is like that girl is this is like, it was like my defining point. Like I was just this person from this dysfunctional family who dated toxic people and who was constantly objectified and sexualized and then penalized for being that person, right? So it's like people saying, oh, I pity her, or like, oh, she's a bad person, but she's a bad person because it's her fault that this is happening to her, right? And I'm not going to lie, most of those people were women too. So it wasn't always just men who were shaming me, it was actually also women who were blaming me. Now, that's the first part, you guys. So I know this is a long process, but you want to just make sure you write down, okay, what your traumas are. So this was my list, okay. Then I go into how these traumas affected me, what the results were, what the triggers were out of this, right? So that is our step two, okay, how it affected us as adults. Or even if this happened in your adult life, you want to see it how it's affecting you now to this day. So it affected me, like I said, I felt unworthy, I developed body image issues, I had eating disorders, and obviously PTSD in itself is, working through your triggers, through your traumas, and recognizing them, finding them at the most random times and points in your life. That's just a process itself. So it really affected me mental health wise. I also think it really affected me socially because I found myself really alone and not really knowing how to act in a lot of situations. I remember there was a time where I would just like lie about myself. In like 2016, I would lie so much. I used to lie a lot, like about myself. I just didn't think that if I told anyone who I really was or where I was actually coming from, I was taught that nobody would love me, respect me. So every time I was looking for love or validation, I would just lie. So it really affected me, back then, especially right now with, me about to give birth in a few months. Not even a few months, like a few weeks, like 10 weeks left now. I think I'm just really, really physically triggered, and I'm not really in control of those triggers because I'm really hormonal right now too. So a lot of the times, like they will come up, or I will have these little triggers that I don't even know about. So which is why I came up with this framework, because I don't want that happening. Like I want a healthy pregnancy, I want a healthy baby. And just the fact that I don't like men or have not had any good men in my life up till I met my husband, um, I don't want that bias affecting me being a mom to a boy, So just something that I really, really want to work on. And I have been working on it. So I wanted to share with you how to actually, work around your triggers. So that's one of the triggers. Like, I think the biggest part for me is how it affects me around my husband. I think sometimes my triggers just make me forget that I am in a safe, loving relationship. I just like a certain touch or a certain look can still throw me into that traumatic response, the fight or flight. Um, and I think that's really bad. because now I'm sure you've seen this meme. It's like, don't bleed on people that didn't cut you. So I think that's really important for us to work on. So sit down, write down how these traumatic experiences have developed into you as patterns, as triggers, and write down how they affect you. Just make a list of all the triggers here. So my results and triggers from my trauma, I'm going to read it off the list now, is like, I became promiscuous as a teen and did not find myself worthy of love and respect. I hated myself, my body, and my personality all the time. A big part of that, that people pleasing was another result of my trauma. I was constantly trying to keep people in my life because I saw my mom leave. I saw my dad kind of, being like, they just didn't. So when we were really, really young as babies, I think they didn't validate us. Which is why I think you grow up and then you're constantly trying to please people into staying into your life. And I think I'm really over that. I really, really got out of that mentality, like people pleasing. I don't really do that anymore, which is amazing. I think which is why I don't shy away from sharing my stories now, because I don't really care what anybody thinks. I'm not, when I'm sharing and making this video or posting this, I'm not thinking about oh, what if someone from back home sees this or hears this, and then what if a family member sees this and feels like, oh, she shouldn't be out and about on the internet saying things like that. But that's the thing though, it's my story, it's mine to share. It's not yours, it's my experience. And this is what I mean by the shame and blame. I want you to write down your triggers, of course, and how you reacted to them, how you're still reacting to them. To this day, as a life coach, I have done a lot of studying. I have come a long way from all of that too. So I do have a very good support system. And especially me, myself, like, I think I have my back so much now that I can finally learn to not seek that validation from my parents. Just understand, just accept that your people who abuse you, okay, or people that you need the validation from, they may never acknowledge, they may never understand what you went through, because you know what? They didn't go through it. You guys, once you have recognized your triggers and the results of the trauma and how it's like developed into patterns in your life, once you're done with that, I want you to write down what you're still doing to seek the validation, or to what you might be subconsciously doing to overcome those issues. Like I said, I still seek my mom's validation in a lot of things. And yeah, so basically, having those toxic people, they may never realize they were toxic to you. They may never understand that the way they acted affected you that deeply. They may never see that. They may never acknowledge that. And you know what? You have to accept that. Like, if, because you want to heal, right? You want to heal from this trauma. You want to move forward from them. How long are we going to sit in one place and be stuck in our head because they're not accepting that they did something wrong, right? Is it fair to us? No. Is it allow you to? I don't need their permission to continue my life. You don't need their permission of anyone who abused you. You don't need their permission to continue your life, to be 100% yourself, to start healing, to manifest that. So acknowledge that, accept that you are done with that, and then you will manifest more courage into yourself. You will manifest more higher energy to move forward from it. Because every time we are letting that trauma control our life presently, we are still in that low vibration of when that happened. We are letting it affect us. We are letting that bring us down. It's us, right? And if you're watching this video, I know you're here because you're ready to move on. So this is what we're doing, right? So we're going to, number 3, we're going to acknowledge that they may never understand. And that is okay. We don't need them to understand. The only thing you need for your healing purpose is to understand yourself. And if it makes sense to you now, if you know what to do, we can move on to the next step, which is reassurance from ourselves. So for this step, number 4, I wrote down, I was like, what have I healed so far? And then I made a list of all the things that are already healed. So, that way I don't feel like, oh, I'm starting from zero. Because you know what, you may not even know that subconsciously you have already done quite a lot of healing to protect yourself. Okay. um no, I'm sure like not everybody is at that point right now. I mean, of course, a lot of my healing comes from being in therapy for the past 3 to 4 years, right? um and then coming out of therapy, I think I just quit therapy like in January, really. So, and I still see a behavioral therapist all the time here and there. But it's just like it will take time, which is okay. But try to see how far you've come. Like it's basically saying, seeing where you stand right now and how that can help you progress, right? So we're trying to focus on the positive aspects of our present moment so we can detach from that past, okay? So, like, for example, my list is that I'm learning to love myself every single day, right? And it's through positive affirmations, it's through doing things that I would never have done before because I was so worried about how people viewed me. And I'm with a healthy partner. I manifested my soulmate and my twin flame. And I think that just is a very big thing for me because before I met him, you guys, like if you go into my manifestation thingy for twin flame, I have talked about how I struggled for like, I think 2 years, 2.5 years. I felt like I did not deserve love. Like I was really, really struggling to accept love. Um, it was, that pattern of going after toxic partners. So every time there was a guy who genuinely loved me or cared for me, I would be appalled by it. Like I would not find that attractive. And that it took a lot of like practice, meditation, even like therapy, just to kind of understand, okay, I need to stop controlling this aspect of my life. And what do you know? I'm attracted to good guys. I actually was like absolutely in love with this man, and I married him really fast because I was like, I'm gonna lock you down before anything bad happens. And another thing in my healing process was that, I got to move away thanks to my mom, and I got to block my dad. I don't speak to the people who I find that affected me negatively back home. I have them all blocked, right? And any people that shamed me, I have also forgiven them just because I have moved away from most of them. And I think that really helped. I know not everybody is as lucky to, have that fresh start to move away, but forgiving them, I think, is like one of the biggest things to do. And you might need professional help to actually work on that, or a lot of like a longer thought process here. But finding forgiveness means is that you're letting go of it. Okay, you're not going to hold that low vibrational energy, that toxicity that they spilled all over your life. Okay, you're letting go of it, you're releasing that, you're not letting them off the hook. Remember, karma's there, God's there, whoever it is that you believe in is there, right? And even if you don't believe in anyone, then, it's just to take that mental burden off of you, okay? So it's not to get them off of the hook. And of course, I am self aware, so that is a very big part in healing. If you're even a little bit self aware of how you are, how you react to things, that's amazing. That's like the biggest step. That's one of the things that takes people the longest to go through, and it's a painful process, to be so aware of your own actions and how they affect people, they affect you. It can be a big process, right? So self-awareness, that's a gift, um, also, I don't view myself from other people's perspectives anymore, which I think is amazing. It took a lot to like not be a people pleaser and not think about, oh, what other people think of me. I'm just myself now, and I don't care if they think I'm sensitive, I'm extra, if they think I'm good or if I'm bad. It doesn't define me. It's all about how I feel, how the people who I genuinely love and are actually part of my life in the present moment, like my husband, my mom, um, it's more about how I affect them and how they affect me. It's not about the other people. Then the next step here is, what can you do now? Okay, now that we have actually gone over and discussed our trauma with ourselves, we have discussed how the results and triggers have affected us, we have discussed how far we have actually come from it, or how far we need to, like the tools that we already have. We have discussed all these three things with ourselves, right? Now we need to discuss with ourselves what we can do now. How do we move forward from this? Now it's about coming up with a plan. So for the purpose of this, I wrote down on a piece of paper, what can I do now? And I made a list again. I do best in a list form, right? So mine was stay grounded. So practicing grounding techniques, being in the present moment, doing things that keep me here in this moment, and like to keep my mind from wandering into the past, like listening to music and stuff like that reminds me of those traumatic times or a bad time in my life, or an embarrassing moment, like trying to stay away from that, just trying to be aware that I am here in this moment, and this moment is what matters, the present. It's not about the future, it's not about the past, it's about right now. So, being grounded is something I want to do. Practicing gratitude to stay more positive, I think that's very helpful. To remind you that, hey, okay, all of those bad things happened, but here we are. A lot has changed from that. And then another thing is to stop seeking external validation. Like I said earlier, I do think I still seek my mom's approval in a lot of things, and I think I'm going to stop doing that, because I don't care. I don't care. It's about me. This is my life, and I think, if my parents can't understand that it's different than theirs, and then it's different from what was socially normal, then that's not on me. That's honestly, that's just how our society conditions us to believe that this is normal, this is wrong. And when you've had anything dysfunctional in your life, like coming from a dysfunctional family, you can't expect to live in socially acceptable life, because it's like no matter what I do, there will always be things about me that will not make sense to other people. So embrace your weirdness, embrace your uniqueness, and embracing the fact that I am different. It's okay. It's fine. Things don't have to happen the same way in everybody's life. That is okay. In fact, I'm really glad, because that's how I met my husband, right? That's how I got everything that I have. That's how my mom is not in that toxic marriage anymore, right? Because she got out of that. That's also, like, I think divorce was kind of a taboo subject at that time too. It's more like, it's a more normal thing now. Like I said, we are more aware of the mental health issues. We have more awareness around these subjects now, like around domestic violence and all that. And honestly, I do want to mention, not all families are like that in Pakistan. My friends had a really nice family, open to learning and enlightening. These are things that are important to me. These are things that I will do to manage my triggers, my trauma. And then the last on my list is actually kind of a weird one. It's up to you if you want to take that one, but I am trying to desensitize my triggers. So anything that triggers me, I am actually trying to um, spend more time with it and try to view it from a different perspective. So I'm trying to desensitize myself where I might be acting hypersensitive, or being triggered without realizing. Like, I'm trying to stop myself in those moments and take a moment to just view it from a different perspective. So, and stop looking back at the past. So that is what I will be doing, you know, to overcome trauma from like childhood and my teenage. But this is the process, right? So I hope this makes sense for you. I'm just going to go over the steps here real quick before we end this video. So first thing was, we made a list of all the traumas that we actually have, and then we went over step 2, how the results of what the results are of that trauma, how it's affected us, what our triggers are. And then we went over how far we've come from it, or if it's affecting us presently, like how it's affecting us right now. And then kind of just taking some time to get that reassurance that it's okay to let go of it, that it's okay to not let that define us. And it's okay that you know it's okay that you are who you are, okay? Nobody deserves to be abused. And honestly, if like me, you were shamed or blamed for any of it, I think it's really important for me to tell you today that it's not your fault, okay? I wish someone had told me that. Nobody's ever told me that. I think a few people, like, But I also think I don't share it with many people. So nobody's ever told me that it was not your fault. I think I've been blamed a lot, but which is exactly why I want to tell you it was not your fault. Okay? Everything that happened to you, everything that other people did to you is not your fault. Um, and I will not tell you that your reactions or your toxic patterns, you're bad for them or you've let yourself down in any way. It's okay. You're here now, you're working on them, and that is what matters. Healing from it, not letting that define you, okay? So go over that, and then in the end, coming up with a plan is just make a list of what you can do now, okay? So it's literally this whole process, this exercise of self talk is all about just having a discussion with yourself from A to Z. Like, where did it start? How it affected me? What am I going to do about it now? Because I'm not going to sit here and let it affect me. So now, if you want to go, go to a psychiatrist, go to therapy, do that. If you want to work on it yourself, like me, like I did therapy for a few years, now I'm working on it myself because I think I have the tools and resources to actually do it. So acknowledge that, come up with a plan that works for you, talk to yourself, because oftentimes the answer is just like right buried, just right under that trauma there, right? And remember the root cause, right? When we talk about inner child wounds and stuff like that, I can go into all that spiritual mumbo jumbo with you. I'm all about that. But at the same time, it's also, I think it's bad that I called it mumbo jumbo, but I can go into that. But I feel like it's just not straightforward, right? And with me, like just being a life coach, I think I need to give you a plan that works right now, that will make sense to you right now, no matter what your spiritual beliefs are. You shouldn't have to reprogram your whole life to, understand a little concept. And remember the root cause, right? When we talk about inner child wounds and stuff like that, I can go into all that spiritual mumbo jumbo with you. I'm all about that. But at the same time, it's also to you right now, no matter what your spiritual beliefs are. You shouldn't have to reprogram your whole life to, understand a little concept. But yeah, so basically, we are when we talk about like all those inner wound healing and all that, a lot of the times we're really just what we're saying is acknowledge it, bring it to the surface. And that tree, that trauma, you know it doesn't just sometimes have one root. If you look under a tree in the soil, there are a lot of roots, and if you've ever actually had to cut a root out of the ground, you know how hard it can be. So obviously it's a process, and trauma, like it starts with one seed, but then it just grows into these so many roots and triggers, reactions, patterns, survival mode, and those are just completely different patterns. And so just going over every little thing like that and coming out, you need a plan, right? So I hope this video makes sense, okay? And again, you guys, remember, it's okay, it's not your fault. That's just something I want you to take away from this video. Even if my process didn't make sense to you, just remember, it's not your fault. So I hope that this exercise helps you come up with a plan that works for you. And I will, like I said, I will link it down below in the description box down, and I will put the pointers there, because I mean it's really just 4 steps, but just because I had to use my own story, the video is of course longer than it was. But I don't think that I can really explain to you without really sharing my experience, because then I want you to know and understand and be able to relate to me too, right? But thank you for watching, you guys. I will see you guys next time. Please like and subscribe if you like this video, and we will see you then.